Good afternoon, everyone. Oof, stage fright. So, before I'd like to give you my speech, I'd like to get a little interaction going between us. I'd like to get to know what point you stand on. So, I'm going to present you something that most high school students find terrifying. If you haven't guessed it already, it's a pop quiz. So, let's just dig into it. So, the first question: what approximate amount of money in US dollars did game players spend on games, hardware, etc. last year? Raise your hand if you think it's A, 15 billion. That was one. Raise your hand if you think it's B, 20 billion. A little bit more. Now raise your hand if you think it's C, 50 billion. Much more. Now, raise your hand if you think it's the last option, D, 100 billion. About the same. So the actual answer is B, 20 billion. So this kind of portrays how big the gaming community as a whole is, that we all spend that amount of money together, which is a huge amount of money. But others might argue that video games are expensive, and so are consoles. So just to clarify that the gaming community is as big as I stated it is, I'd like to ask you the next question. So what approximate amount of individuals are a part of the gaming community? So raise your hand if you think it's A, 500 million. Very few. So raise your hand if you think it's B, 800 million. A little bit more. Raise your hand if you think it's C, 1 billion. All right? Raise your hand if you think it's D, 5 billion. And no one. Okay, so the actual answer is C, 1 billion, but the actual estimate is 1.2 billion. So what does 1.2 billion actually look like? So I'd like to show you this picture. The very, very top left corner up there, less than a pixel, you can see one individual playing his computer game. That's not that much. Now, as a whole, one could say that we represent that shape there, which is 1 billion. But that's not even enough. We still have to add 2 more plates up in order to get the full rectangle, which is the gaming community. So, why am I stating this? Why does this even matter? It's because that video games have always been looked down upon as a lonely waste of time and money. But as a casual gamer myself, I can tell you that it isn't. Since I've been a little boy, I've always been into video games. I've loved them since I was like little. And in my first school, every single one of my friends owned some kind of video game. Now, as many things in life, everything has some kind of bump in the road. And this bump came in the shape of a person. Well, more specifically, my father. Hi, Dad. So, let's just say that he was not rather pleased with me wasting all of my time by a screen. But my mother convinced him there's just a phase I was going through, and she was right. I had just completed Mario Land, and I was ready to move out to the big wide world. Then my uncle came along and gave me The Legend of Zelda, and then I was kind of in the bedroom again. But besides just being an amazing way to spend some time with yourself, video games can actually help you improve as an individual. Video games could actually help you improve your reading skills, your cognitive flexibility, and moreover, relieve some stress. So that leads me to my first question. Could a person with a common reading dysfunction, such as dyslexia, simply improve by playing video games? What? That sounds crazy, right? Well, Andrea Facchetti of the University of Padua and the Scientific Institute Medea of Possesso Parini in Italy did a major research into the aspect of which video games could have either a positive or negative effect upon reading skills. In his studies suggested that action video games enhance many aspects of visual attention, mainly improving the extraction of information from the environment, whereas it turned out that dyslexic people learn to orient and focus their attention more efficiently to extract the relevant information of a written word more rapidly. That was even longer. So, in Mr. Facchetti's study, he only used people with dyslexia for a specific reason. Well, there would be a more significant change. A dyslexic person who was to go up and read a sentence that they'd never seen before in their life would go up and barely be able to read it. Now, if that person played video games or just had some kind of improvement even the slightest, they could go up and go from barely being able to read it to just stuttering through it. Now, another key role in this is how they did it, of course. So the participants of this experiment had to play 12 hours of action video games over the course of a week. Whereas to everybody's surprise, it actually turned out that that helped them improve their reading abilities more than if they had taken a full year of reading courses. But besides just improving reading skills, playing video games could also help improve a person's cognitive flexibility. In an experiment done by scientists at the Queen Mary University of London, 72 volunteers was recruited to get their cognitive flexibility measured. Now, in case you're wondering, cognitive flexibility is a person's ability to adapt and switch between tasks and think about multiple ideas at a time given to solve problems. The two groups were to play these video games over the course of 40 hours over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. Whereas the scientists had discovered that the people who played the real-time strategy game called StarCraft, which is you as a player having to organize and construct an army in order to win over the enemy, were more accurate and precise in performing cognitive tasks than those who had played another well-known game called The Sims, which is still a game about constructing something, but this time a family. And you as a player then have to make important life decisions for that family, which will pretty much not change the outcome of the game. If you're playing a game like The Sims, you as the player can lean back. You can take a bite of a sandwich, you can reply to grandma about what you're going to do this weekend. But when you're playing a real-time strategy game like StarCraft, you have to be on top of your game, because the player that you're going to be playing against is most likely going to be another person on the other side of that screen with about the same brain capacity as you. But in order to win, you still have to be the fastest. Now, when I've had a full week of school and I feel exhausted from all the work, what do? Well, I play video games as my way of getting rid of that stress that I built up during the week. But as much as this surprised me, this could actually turn out to work on a majority of people. In a lab, psychology professor Mark Baldwin of the McGill University of America invented a game consisting of a grid of frowning faces, where you as the player have to click that one randomly placed smiling face. Seems fairly simple. As his hypothesis, Professor Baldwin stated that through repeated playing, the game trains the mind to orient towards the most positive aspects of life. The test was done on 24 working people, whereas 12 of the 24 had to play another game consisting of a grid of smiling faces, whereas there would be one randomly placed frowning face. Now again, the goal of this game is to click the one frowning face. Again, fairly simple. But after this study was done, a saliva test was done on all the subjects in this experiment. And surprisingly enough again, it turned out that there was a 17 reduction of the stress hormone cortisol production in the brain. Now, Professor Baldwin also stated in the end of his lab report that there are many possible applications for this kind of game, from helping people to cope with social anxiety of public speaking or meeting new people, to helping athletes concentrate more on the game rather than worrying about performing poorly. Whether people want to play video games is totally up to themselves. I mean, who am I to come up on a stage and tell you guys to go home and play video games? I love video games, and I will always love them. Even as I mentioned in the story, my father wasn't a fan of it, but today's reality is that me and my father, we sometimes spend time together playing video games. One specific example of this is one time we wanted just to play a little bit before we had to go do something. We stopped at 4 in the morning. And we both enjoyed it, even though it may not be the ideal father-son time. However, as many things in life, it depends how you do it for it to become healthy. I'm not the kind of gamer who will waste my life on video games. I will not sit every day closing out every single thing in my life for just having a game. No, I still go to school, I hang out with my friends, I go visit family. In my opinion, video games are probably the best way for me to improve my reading skills, cognitive flexibility, and moreover, get rid of some stress. And as you could see in the beginning of my speech, where we did the pub quiz, The gaming community is humongous, like it's really big. And I'm a part of that community, and I'm proud of it. Thank you for your attention.